This is an entire PC assembly guide in a single video. There are 7 main PC components in a computer. You have your CPU plus cooler, your motherboard, your RAM, storage, graphics card, power supply, and case. When planning which components you want in your system, I recommend using a website called PCPartPicker.com to ensure compatibility between all of your parts. Now let's start by installing as many parts onto the motherboard before moving it into the case. With the CPU, locate the golden triangle corner of the processor and align that with the triangle corner of the motherboard socket. You shouldn't have to force this, the CPU should drop nicely into place and you can lock it down into the socket. Now many CPUs come packaged with a stock cooler that does have pre-applied thermal paste. If your cooler does not have thermal paste, you'll want to put a dot or a cross down onto your CPU before installing the cooler. Finally, don't forget to plug in the CPU cooler fan into the CPU fan header on the motherboard. Next up, RAM should be installed in dual channel whenever possible. Check your motherboard's manual for the recommended RAM slots to use. When installing, you'll notice a single gap in the bottom of each RAM stick, and you'll want to align that with the single bump in each RAM slot on the motherboard. Align those two and you should be able to press down to click the RAM into place. Now let's install the motherboard into the case and start by inserting the I/O shield into the back of the case. Then you can place the motherboard on the case standoffs and screw it into place to secure it. This is a good time to install the power supply, generally in the bottom back of the case. Secure it with some screws and then let's do some cable management. The largest power supply cable is for motherboard power, installs on the right side of the motherboard. CPU power cable plugs along the top side of the motherboard. You'll also need to plug in a few things from your case, like the USB and front panel cables. Locations of these vary from motherboard to motherboard, so I recommend just checking your manual. Up next, let's install the storage, in this case a single SSD. For this, we just plug in our SATA power cable as well as our SATA data cable and find a place to secure in our case. Last but certainly not least is our graphics card. For this, you want to install in the topmost PCI Express slot, and you should be able to click it into place without much force. Secure it with the screw and plug in the PCI power cables. With that, our PC is completely assembled, and if we did everything properly, we should be able to boot into BIOS to ensure that it's working. From here, the last step is installing an operating system of your choice. If you made it this far in the video, I'll let you know that I do have some Mr. Yeaster merchandise like this t-shirt on my website, MrYeaster.com. This video moved pretty quick, but that's because